I'm very happy to welcome Yaxing Yao from UMBC to our HCIL Brown Bag Weekly Speaker Series. He is right up the road from us here at College Park. And today he's going to be sharing some of his ongoing privacy research with a presentation, Privacy for Whom? A Multi-Stakeholder Exploration on Privacy Designs in Smart Homes. So without further ado, Yaxing, why don't you begin?
Great, thank you. Thanks, Jessica, for the kind introduction. Thanks for having me here. I'm very glad to have the opportunity to share some of my research with you. So today I'll talk about a line of research that I have been working on related to multi-stakeholder privacy designs in the context of smart homes. So let's start it by talking about privacy in smart home. So this is a kind of a typical smart home. It may contain several smart devices like voice assistant, security camera, thermostat, and so on. The connectivity nature of these devices can easily cause a lot of privacy issues as well as people's concerns. So plenty of prior work has focused on uncovering users' privacy concern around these smart home devices. So for example, you can hear, you know that smart speakers they can be listening and recording all the time. Security cameras can record not only audio data, but also the visual data. It is also possible to infer some sensitive information using some like seemingly non-intrusive data points, such as using the smart bulb usage to infer your schedule, or use your temperature data to infer your preference or even your health condition. Even smart toys, they also present like significant privacy risks. However, as we're seeing here, similar to the prior literature, so research has been focusing on kind of the end user perspective of smart homes. But things, in this particular context, things can go beyond what the end user experience. In the privacy issue in smart home can definitely also go beyond this. So let's think about the following scenarios. So for example, you have a roommate in your dorm. Then your roommate, you or your roommate install a smart speaker, but it's always listening capability could also record kind of everybody's voice in the same room. Another example here, like a ring doorbell or outdoor security camera can easily catch the image of a passersby or a UPS driver or even your neighbors, oftentimes without their awareness. So I believe many of you probably have heard similar news at some point saying that UPS truck drivers, they were caught on camera doing something, which on one hand that can be useful as a way to hold them accountable for your package, but on the other hand, there's also a privacy issue which they don't really have a lot of control over. So the last example, the example here is also quite common. Think about the time when you were invited to go to your friend's house for a party, but you see a number of like security cameras or other smart devices around you or around your friend's house. So you are now the owner, you're now the user, but you care about your privacy. So what would you do in this situation? So think about these real world cases. It's not really difficult to come to this conclusion. When it comes to privacy, there are more people to consider in the smart home ecosystem. So I refer this phenomenon as a multi-stakeholder privacy issue. So for today, I'll talk about a few things. I'll start with kind of the concept of multi-stakeholder privacy. Then I'll talk a little bit about my past work on users and bystander privacy in smart homes. Then I share a little bit of my ongoing work on increasing awareness of surrounding data collection in smart homes. Then I'll introduce a system that we have been working on that can help improve bystanders awareness. Then I'll touch slightly on the future work. Feel free to stop me if you have any questions in between. I'll be happy to answer them. So multi-stakeholder privacy. So before we talk about this concept, we need to talk about one thing. What is a stakeholder? I draw the definition of stakeholder from the stakeholder theory. So it is theory from the business organizational context. So in this theory, stakeholder is defined as any group or individual who can affect or is affected by the achievement of an organization's goals. So if we think about this and bring this to the to the think about the kind of who are can be involved here. So as you can see in this graph, a company has internal stakeholders such as employees and managers, and external stakeholders such as like suppliers, government, or the shareholders. So if we kind of bring this definition or this particular theory into the technological context, we can define stakeholder as any group or individual who can affect or is affected by the use of technology. So for example, in a computing system, in technology, there are immediate stakeholders like the primary users and the bystanders. So primary user refer to the owner or the user of the system, while the bystander refer to people who are not the primary user, but would also involved in the technology usage. For example, in the example we give before, the security camera in your smart home happens to capture your neighbor, then your neighbor is considered as a bystander, and you will be the user in this case. But technology itself also does not exist alone. It relies on many entities on the large social environment. So we have like external stakeholder such as societal, economical, legal, or technological other stakeholders. So in this talk, basically we'll talk about the immediate stakeholder. And we also, as we briefly mentioned before, the prior privacy research has been primarily focusing on a single stakeholder perspective, meaning that they only consider one stakeholder at a time. So for example, I know research has been doing a lot of work looking at the privacy of primary users in the context of social media, IoT, smartphones, all this technological context. They're also, that's kind of the main body of the existing privacy literature. And then more recently, there have been research looking at the privacy of bystanders, in the context of security, security cameras, smart homes, and live logging devices, all these things. And then in terms of external stakeholder, research has also looked at, how the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, and the California Consumer Privacy Act impact how we approach privacy issues and how users can be impacted. But again, these stakeholders are considered and examined individually for the most of the time. So the multi-stakeholder, what I argue for the multi-stakeholder perspective of privacy is that we should investigate the needs of all stakeholders. But the ultimate goal here is to not only consider the needs of all stakeholders, but more importantly, it aims to balance the needs of different stakeholders and find optimal solutions that work for everyone. Having this in mind, so let's first take a look at my kind of some of my past work on this, which touched on primary users and bystanders in the context of smart home. So going back to this particular smart home, we noticed that this is a kind of natural environment for multiple stakeholders. We have primary users, we have for example end users or device owners. We also have bystanders in this case that would include like guests, tenants, or passersby, your neighbors that are all here. So we did two focus group studies along with participatory design sessions with a group of smart home users and a group of smart home bystanders. So here are some of the highlights from our results in our comparison. So for primary users, the majority of them focus on their own privacy, and they don't believe that bystanders should have any privacy concerns or expectations in their own home. They also care more about how their data is shared and used for what purpose. And then finally, their privacy perceptions are not very contextual, meaning that once they form their privacy perception, it is almost bonded to their own home and not likely to change. But for bystanders, what we noticed that they do have privacy needs, first of all, but particularly they care about the data collection, like what data is collected, that type of thing. Not so much about data sharing or usage. So one thing to note is that the bystanders, their privacy perceptions are very contextual. It's because as bystanders, their role will constantly changing across different contexts. So they can be a guest in one context, and they can be a passersby in another context. Then their perception will change accordingly. So aside from these differences, one important observation we found in the study is the kind of the potential social confrontation that exists among around primary users and the bystanders. So, take a look at this example. In this example, the participant believed that he was not in the place to tell the owner to turn off the device, even though he was not comfortable. So in a smart home, in this particular context, a home is no longer your private castle anymore, but more of a social context. So every stakeholder in this particular social context needs to deal with the social relationship, need to deal with their privacy, and also need to deal with the privacy dilemma that comes with the relationship. So for that particular those particular work, we have two takeaway messages. The first one is we know that bystanders, they do have privacy needs, and we need to think about those. And the other thing is, bystanders, they often give social relationship or this kind of social factors a higher priority compared to their own privacy. So with this in mind, we're just start to think about, well, what can we do? What are the things that we can do as researchers or as designers? How can we facilitate this situation? Well, we start thinking from that line. One starting point is to see, can we make users and bystanders more aware of the situation, such as the data practices of their surrounding smart home devices? If we aim to do so, are there any tension or confliction or like unmatched expectations in terms of increasing the awareness of users and bystanders? So are there anything from that perspective? So one of our ongoing research, we're looking at how to effectively notify users and bystanders of the data practices of surrounding smart home devices. So the goal is really to explore different possibilities regarding how to deliver the knowledge of different data practices to both users and bystanders effectively. To do so, first based on the literature and existing features in some of the off-the-shelf smart home devices, we designed 4 mechanisms that can potentially be used to notify people of the data practices of smart home devices. We then conducted a survey study to collect their feedback and the preferences of each of the mechanism under different contexts. So I'll talk some more about the preliminary findings from the study. And before that, let me first introduce the 4 mechanisms. So the first one it's basically a dashboard. So the idea of dashboard is kind of inspired by some of the existing effort in the literature, such as there was a tool called IoT Inspector. So basically, it scans your it scans your home network to show what devices are connected, how the device communicated with each other and with external entities, and then to basically help you to understand the kind of the information flow, information collection in your home. And then inspired by those line of designs, we kind of went through multiple iterations and to come up with something that's looks a little bit nicer, but basically contains the kind of the similar information. So a dashboard like this, you can see some of the details of your device that's connected to your home, and then we can kind of give people the ability to explore a little bit more of the even more details of data collection status or data sharing permission, all those kinds of things based on the your settings. So that's the first mechanism. The second one is we call that a data app. Is something some made up name. So the app is a very similar idea as the data dashboard, but exists as an app in your phone. So users can download the app and connect to your devices. And then for bystanders, we expect them to kind of use the app by connecting to the user's home Wi-Fi. Then the app can scan the device in the user's home. Then for bystanders, they can start to look at the data collection, those kind of things. So to be clear, these are not actual products. These are design concepts that we're trying to carry out throughout the study, and we want to first collect the users' feedback on people's feedback on a mechanism like this, and we want to see what works well, what doesn't work well, and what are the things that we can improve based on this. So this is the second one. The third one mechanism is a privacy speaker. So this is, as you can see here, this mechanism rely on audio cues. So this is mostly inspired by some of the existing features on voice assistants nowadays. For example, my Amazon Echo generally speaks two types of messages. So it will talk by itself when my packages are delivered, and it will also speak up when there's some connection issues like Wi-Fi or something like that. So based on this idea, we're just thinking maybe we can explore the possibility of using the speaker itself as a channel to deliver privacy-related notifications and to help people be more aware of the situation. So that's the way we come. This is something we come up with. Then the last mechanism we came up was ambient lighting. So the idea here is really to utilize, we're talking about smart home, Internet of Things. We really want to utilize the concept of the things like in your home, something that's already there without having an additional piece of device. So this mechanism utilizes smart light bulbs that can change color. This is also inspired by kind of the general LED indicator on devices. Like for some security cameras, when the camera is on, it has a green dot. When it's off, it shows red and there's no lights, something like that. So inspired by that feature, we're thinking, maybe we can use the light as a source of information. So the idea is that the brightness of the light indicates the data volume. The brighter it is, the more data your smart home device is sharing or is transmitting. Then the color of the lights indicates the invasiveness of the data practices. For example, when your smart devices are communicating with third-party advertisers, the light can show red, versus when it's communicating with first-party manufacturers and for functionality, then it will show as green. So for this particular mechanism, we actually created something that's working. I have a quick demo for this, for this mechanism. So basically, we're trying to show that this is actually something feasible. So I can show the demo pretty quickly. So if you can see, let's see if I can play this. So this is a smart TV. We have a light, a bulb that hook up with this. As you can see, it changes color while the content on the TV changes. So the yellowish color represents regular traffic that is not considered as invasive or nothing very special. And then in this case, you see when the Android starts to show up, then there's some sort of a right color. Then I can move forward a little bit. So if you go to, let me see, I think it's at here. So this is like when the advertisement start to show up, then you're gonna see that the lights start to change colors to red and more reddish stuff. And then when it goes back to like normal TV mode with the video, then the light changes to the yellowish color, which means that it's in a regular traffic that are not considered as invasive. So this is the idea of the lights, and we're trying to use this as a concept to understand how user perceive this. So basically, we have four mechanisms so far. Then we start to work on a survey that kind of try to understand how users and bystanders would perceive this. So we have two populations. We have users and bystanders. We for each of the mechanism, we ask them 3 questions. Their perceived effectiveness of this mechanism in terms of notifying them about the data practices, perceived ease of use, and their comfortableness to use. And then after this, we kind of put them in four different scenarios. Each of the scenario represent different types of smart devices in the scenario, and we're trying to understand, well, under each scenario, whether their preference of mechanisms and why, and along with a few other questions. Then for the participant, we recruited participants from a Prolific, which is a crowdsourcing platform similar to Amazon Mechanical Turk. we get 150 users. So in this case, we define user as someone who at least owns one smart home devices. And then we, for bystanders, we were saying, well, anyone can be bystanders, even though regardless of whether you own or don't own a device, you can be a bystander in some cases. So we basically allow anyone who's older than age 18 to be to enter the bystander survey. So we got some the sample is not the perfect sample for some reason. I think it's just we suspect that this is because some of the so back in August there was some sort of advertisement push out by Prolific that draws a lot of female participants on the platform. So we get a slightly a sample that's slightly skewed towards female. So that's that. Then I'll share some of the preliminary results from this particular study. We start with some of the pros and cons of each of the mechanism. So some of these things we try to summarize the things that emerged from the data. Then kind of regarding the pros and cons. And some of these are fairly straightforward. For example, dashboard provide detailed information. And both user and bystander think so. And then it's also a very centralized source information where the user and bystander can see. One of the interesting thing regarding the pros for the data dashboard, it's a standalone device basically at the hands in your living room or some other places. So with this devices, several bystanders actually think that this is a very good way for them to reduce the dependence on user in terms of figuring out the data practices or data collection situations when they are a bystander. They don't have to ask their friends, especially if they're not familiar with folks. Then that's they can be very very helpful. But we also see some kind of concerns regarding this. Like for example, in the case where the users with the bystanders when they reduce they can reduce the dependence on users, but at the same time, sometimes it's weird just to go up to other people's devices and to check out the device, which kind of violates the social norms. And then another concern is even though when they're comfortable to check out other devices, some bystanders they mentioned that they don't really have enough trust towards that dashboard or towards the users. They tend to believe that some users they could easily set up the device to not display any useful information when their data is collected. So that's about the data dashboard. In terms of the mobile app. We see some common themes regarding they can access the information through their personal device or provide detailed information. One key benefit of the app was that it can help bystanders to avoid the pressure of any potential social norm. So mostly because bystanders generally were more comfortable interacting with their own device. With the app on their own device, they're interacting with the device mounted on the wall in the home where they were the guest. So in this case, they feel like, well, once they have app, they don't have to really deal with the potential social awkwardness. But we also noticed some interesting concerns from the bystanders. Many of them actually mentioned that the app itself may invade users' privacy, since the bystanders can see the connected devices from their app. So that particular fact is they consider that as an invasion to the user's privacy. So interestingly, this result is also in line with our findings in our 9th CSW 19 paper on bystanders privacy expectation, confirming that the needs. Confirming that we do need some sort of trade-off that balance the bystanders' needs and the user's privacy. Then looking at the privacy speaker, it's effortless. They often think like something they can just the information delivered to them. It's interesting, but it can also similar to the dashboard, it reduces the dependency on users. But at the same time, some bystanders they do mention that just knowing the fact that their data is being collected without being able to control it, it can potentially cause more anxiety to them. And then there are definitely some other usability issues, like it can be very annoying, intimidating when you're just sitting there and something just speak up. Then the voices can something that can quickly goes off if you don't pay attention. It's just gone, right? So this is some of the usability issue. And then lastly, when we come to the ambient lighting, one of the interesting things in terms of the pros of ambient lighting is the both users and bystanders like the obtrusiveness of the ambient lighting, since they mentioned that in some occasions, such as when friends are visiting and you are having fun time, just watching a movie or something, and don't really want to be interrupted, then the ambient lighting really gives people in the room a sense that something is happening. So at some particular moment, they don't really need to know the details. They only need to know something's happening. If they're interested, they can go pull up their phone or go to the dashboard or something to check more details. But at least they know something's happening. For bystanders, if they know something is happening, and then if they want to know, they can always ask. Related to this, another pro is the ambient lighting can really avoid some of the social awkwardness, since some users mentioned that they don't really want to constantly notify their guests that their information is being collected. So the obtrusiveness could make the awareness more silent and thus reduce the awkwardness. But it also has some side effect. For example, some bystander mentioned that they might have some psychological burden, which is really a usability issue of the ambient light. Like when the room suddenly turns red, and as a bystander, you don't know what happened, then it can create some mental stress. So these are some of the pros and cons. Looking at these pros and cons of the different mechanisms, we kind of summarized quickly about some of the takeaway messages. First of all, bystanders, they do need autonomy. They don't really want to depend on users in order to get a little bit more awareness of what's going on in the context. Then we also noticed that social factors play a key role in our participants' perception of awareness mechanisms, particularly for bystanders. They think about the social norms, think about the trust issue, think about users' privacy and a potential social confrontation that could happen when they're trying to seek for some information, and then definitely the power dynamics that could exist. Then, and then a lot of this feedback we got is, we definitely need to do more research to improve the usability of some of the mechanisms. And then, given the time constraint, I'm going to kind of briefly talk about some of the the highlights from the scenario-based results.
Yaxing, you have till 1:30, so we do have.
I still have another part of the presentation, which is about system. So
okay, just wanted to make sure that you weren't rushing when you still have time.
Okay, all right, sounds good. Thank you. So the scenario-based results highlights, there are a few things I can talk about here. So one thing is about, the app. So the app remains the most popular choices across all scenarios. Basically for users, then we talk about, they kind of appreciate the detailed information provided through the app, and then it's very convenient. You don't have to carry an additional device and things like that. But for bystanders, aside from the convenience factor, a lot of bystanders think that the app provides them more agency in being aware of and controlling their own data, since they can do this through the app on their own devices instead of relying on other people. We also noticed that the ambient light and private speakers were more preferable in a visiting friends scenario and work from home scenarios. So which means that users, they would prefer those kind of unobtrusive experiences when they're working or when friends are visiting. Then they don't really want to be interrupted. And then for bystanders, the main consideration here is really to reduce the potential social confrontation, because they don't really want to kind of argue with their friends or argue with the partners in the work from home scenario. Then what they need to know is something's happening, and if they want to take some actions, they can go from there. Interestingly, we also find, there are many participants, they select a none option. They don't want to have any mechanisms in the scenarios. Basically, that indicates, they prefer, a lot of participants, they prefer not to receive any privacy notice. So which is, interesting results. We do definitely need to dig more into the quality data to find out some kind of reasons, but that's still ongoing. Then, the takeaway messages from this particular, scenario-based, there are a few things. First of all, providing awareness to both users and bystanders is important. The majority of participants, they still prefer to receive some sort of situation. They're interested to know what's going on with the data practices in regardless of whether they are the users or bystanders. Then the other thing is providing awareness to users and bystanders. It's not just a technical problem, it's also a social problem. We're trying to figure out what is the best awareness mechanisms under different scenarios, and what are the factors that could make the awareness mechanisms not successful or not effective, particularly for bystanders. I guess those are things that we're still working on. Those are lessons or questions we draw from the existing research, and then we're continue to work on this on these areas. And then the last question is where is the trade-off? The trade-off between the needs of the bystanders, needs of the users, and the trade-off between usability, between usability and the privacy awareness. So that's something we also need to figure out. Then so from here we noticed that app is something that seems to be promising, like I mentioned before. Then so we're thinking of, well, what are things we can do? This kind of connected very nicely to one of the system we have been working on since my postdoc. We're actively working on this, or collecting data to make this a more usable system. We're trying to do more research. So this is something. The system is called IOT Privacy Infrastructure. So I want to talk a little bit about this to see how we kind of integrate the multi-stakeholder perspective in the app like this that can help users to know more about the data collection and the privacy situation. So this is our logo. Which is it's a chameleon. So basically, chameleon use their ability to change colors to make themselves less visible. Then this shield-shaped tail of our chameleon represent the way in which the IoT privacy infrastructure can help people protect their privacy by informing them about data collection around them. And if there are any privacy settings available, we can also help them to control how data about them can be collected and used. So the motivation of this privacy infrastructure, there are mostly two of them. So the first one, we would like to provide effective prior notice and choices to generate users about data collection by internet devices around them. So this is particularly important in the IoT context, because there's no obvious mechanisms to communicate the presence of IoT technology, the data collection and use practices in any associated privacy settings, especially when you consider when you are you're a bystander, for example, you're just walking on the street. How would you be able to know that there are any devices around you that are actually collecting data? Then those are the cases we're trying to tackle. The second motivation is, we envision this IoT privacy infrastructure. It can be a system which facilitate the communication among different stakeholders. In this particular case, among users and bystanders. This is how we kind of integrate the multi-stakeholder perspective into the infrastructure. So first of all, the infrastructure allow IoT owners, we call that resource owners, the owners to publicize their resource and disclose the data practices through a portal, the IoT portal. And then we choose the word resource instead of IoT devices, because resource just represent a larger scope, which can include IoT devices, services, and systems. For example, an IoT resource can be a smart device like a security camera, or it can be a Wi-Fi network that include different that can cover different places like the entire campus. The second thing is, this privacy infrastructure enables bystanders to discover nearby IoT resources and their data practices and manage their privacy settings through an IoT Assistant app, which I'll talk about later. And then eventually eventually that's how we kind of imagine, how we enable privacy awarenesses among users and among the bystanders. So here's a brief, high-level overview of the architecture of the IoT privacy infrastructure. So this is, there's a very complex system, and given the time we have, I'll explain kind of a simple version of this. So on the left side, as you can see here, you will see an IoT portal. So this is for the IoT owner to publicize their resource. So if they have any IoT devices or other resources, they can publish the resource presence and their data practices. In addition, if the owner are like organizations or belong to an organization, if there is any privacy management tool, for example, if they have an interface where user can, set up their privacy preference, then the owner can also integrate that into their infrastructure through the privacy option management function. On the right side, you will see an IoT Assistant. So it is an app that we built, which bystanders can use it to discover IoT resources around them. So once the resource is published by the owner, it will appear on a map in this app. Then the bystanders, they can see what the resources are around them to understand their data practices, and whenever there are privacy options available, they can potentially set their preferences. So this is kind of the overview of the architecture, and then this is the kind of the homepage of the portal. It's currently live at the iotprivacy.io, and something if you're interested, you can take a look. So basically, I'll quickly walk through the kind of the flow of how we would imagine this work. When you log in, start to create a resource, then you just fill out this form. So basically, as an IoT resource owner, then you can kind of specify the names and then a number of the details here. And then we also have a template function that can be used to reduce the user's effort. So you can just so it's right here. We're improving the interface a little bit. So basically, you can import the template for like popular devices like Amazon Echo or Google Home. And once you do that, all of these fields will be automatically populated. And then you can just go ahead and then select, make modifications in terms of description or names, but most of the stuff will be there. And then once you do that, then you need to specify the location and kind of the approximate data collection radius here to say, well, if you're in the range, then you are likely to be caught by our device or something like that. So yeah, this is our area of coverage radius. For example, if if you have a security camera, it can be something around like 50 meters or something like that. Then here is really about the data practices. So we worked on a number of taxonomy in terms of the types of data that can be collected by this particular resource. As some of the details, like is the data collected identifiable, or what are the measures that have been taken before processing or publishing the data. So basically, here is the place where the IoT resource owner can specify the data practices that they're taking. So a general, like I kind of mentioned before, a general user, they might not know all the information. So that's why we have the template function. So the template itself contains all these information based on individual devices. And once you import that, and all these will be automatically populated. And then, once you finish the data practices, and then if there's the privacy options right here, if you have options, you can embed that. And then once you do this, you can publish the resource. And then, you can go to the IoT Assistant app to discover the resource. So basically, you can, as you can see here, you can filter by the data, what data being collected, and then you can see if you're interested in visual data, then You can see what are the devices that are around you to that are collecting visual data or audio data, whatever data you're interested in, or all of them. Then in this case, if you move your map, you can do a search, or if you just drive by or just walk on the street, you will be able to just refresh this or get a notification about data collections around you. Then here's some of the details. Like this is what would happen when you click on one of the dots. So basically, it shows the details of the resource, the description, the data practices, and provide you a chance to manage your privacy options if that's something that's available. So in this particular case, you see here, the privacy management options are available. Then I can just click on that button, that manage my privacy option button, and go to it will take me to the site of the resource owner to set up my own privacy preference. So this is the system we're trying to we're working on. Then we do so right now. It's if you go to in the App Store or Android store, you're gonna search for IoT Assistant. You will be able to find the app. It's currently live. Then if you're interested, feel free to download and give it a try. Then just to make it clear, so this system entirely is based on crowdsourcing. So basically, it would rely on IoT users, device owners, to kind of report their own device, then share the data practices they're taking for their devices, and then it will also allow the bystanders to kind of discover what are the things that are around them, what are the devices doing in terms of their data, and then all those type of things. So given that, then what's next? So that the system can potentially enable us to do a lot of interesting things. So from the research perspective, currently we have about 17,000 users and about 150,000 resources in the infrastructure. So that user base, together with the preliminary results we talked today, it really gives us a good opportunities to collect data in the field, in the real world, and to study questions like, what are resources people would like to or would not like to publicize, and why do they do that? So what are the motivations why people actually publicize their own devices? If you have a security camera, why do you want to publicize that? So that's kind of something we want to answer. And then when would people like to receive notifications? Well, their preference differ across different contexts. That's something we have some sort of idea in the lab setting, but the system itself really enables us to study this particular question in the wild with real user in real world scenarios. And then, once we have more understanding, we can think about, how can we nudge users to make more informed privacy decisions. And then eventually, one of the questions that I'm really interested in is to see how do bystanders, and probably including users as well, how do they navigate through a complex social setting that's that they're in, then how can they negotiate their privacy choices after being aware of the data practices? I think that's one of the fundamental questions I'm interested in, in the context of multi-stakeholder privacy. Then eventually the goal is to really come up with a either a strategy or some sort of tool that can help users to either navigate through the setting, to help them to accomplish the negotiation, and to come to a point where basically different stakeholders are happy with the privacy situation. So that's kind of the ultimate goal. So I think with that, I will conclude the talk and take any questions.